Good afternoon, Earth. My name is Scott Churchson, alongside Mr. Obi Spencer, Mr. Rob Stats, and also Mr. JD Walker here. And welcome to the Sports Den. This is on Spangler Sports World, Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android devices. When you download, make sure to rate, leave a comment. Both apps are free, so you can't beat the price. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. So if you have any level of close to update technology, you can get our show. Gentlemen, we're going to start with you, JD, because I think you were the last one on of the four of us. So you get to start off. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited for the winning teams in New Jersey to start playing this week, namely the start of college basketball season. Both Seton Hall and Rutgers should be projected to have some good seasons.
You're wearing the Pirates with pride there.
Yes, I am. Eagerly looking forward to the matchup with Michigan next week to get revenge for a stolen national championship.
And we will absolutely discuss that, yes. And we're going to give you your open time slot. You can just roll with that as much as it makes you happy. Rob, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I just finished a webinar on my other thing at 4 o'clock, so I'm all Da Vinci'd up now, ready to rock and roll.
You finished that? I got the alert that you're
I would have been done actually. You got for our viewers who don't know, I literally signed in right before we came on the air, but it was ironically we had a delay, and I'm like, oh my god, I was like it's gonna take 10 more minutes, and then he was like, no, we're out, and I'm like, okay, bye.
So, last but certainly not least, what's going on?
Oh, not too much. I got nothing exciting other than I'm going to be pulling for Rutgers basketball this year, and if we're going to talk about college sports, I know I was telling you yesterday, Scott, Rutgers had a nice little weekend. Had two Big Ten women's championships at home back to back. First, it was field hockey against Michigan, which they won, and then soccer against Michigan, which they lost. And then in both those national tournaments, Rutgers is the number one seed. So RU women's sports taking advantage of being in the Big Ten. Maybe the men's football team can someday follow suit.
True indeed. But we'll get to that as well. But we're going to start this off in this case. We're going to be talking a little NFL right now because we're at basically, I guess, what we can sort of call the halfway point of the season. Under the 17-game schedule, 8 weeks. It's a little more complicated to figure out exactly what the midpoint is at this point, but we'll say after 9 weeks across the board. But we got a lot of basic sleepers here. We have some disappointments. We got some shocks. We got some teams that I think are feel good. And we're going to break down what we think is the way too early prediction of who's going to win the Super Bowl, who's going to win Coach of the Year, who's going to win Rookie of the Year. And if it's anything like my guesses, we'll probably be horribly, horribly wrong. So, Obi, I'm going to start off with you. Give me something, basically, your biggest surprise so far. And then after that, I'm going to go JD and then Rob. As far as what you think was the biggest surprise so far this year.
My personal biggest surprise for this year, I'm going to go with the success of Mac Jones and the New England Patriots. I know it's Bill Belichick. And I know that, and I was fully cognizant of them getting a bunch of players back from defense from 2 years ago onto their team because they were only out for COVID. But right now, they feel as much of a contender as anybody else for a wild card in the AFC, and that's not something I expected from them at all. So my truly biggest surprise is probably Bill Belichick doing what Bill Belichick does, which is weird to be a surprise.
All right. JD, how about yourself, sir?
I was actually not surprised by the resurgence of the Patriots because I've watched them torture my team for the past 20 years and know that you can never completely count them out.
Actually, I would say Rob's team too, but
yeah, we'll torture the entire league, really, for that long. But with Mac Jones developing into a solid player this quickly. He's not he's not putting up the stats as some of the other quarterbacks are, but in what is otherwise looking like a disappointing crop of rookie quarterbacks so far, Jones has been arguably the best one. And with the players coming back on defense, I was just not sold on Buffalo this year being as good as they were last year. But that especially after this past week, that's that's actually looking on point. The biggest surprise for me is the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Justin Herbert played very well last year, so we knew that they would be. Yet the Chargers have always been a team that just can't get out of their own way, and so far they're winning the AFC West in what is a strong division, which at the halfway point every team is over 500. So yes, Kansas City is 5-4, but they're only a half game out of first place. You have the Chargers in Vegas at 5-3. And Kansas City and Denver at 5-4. So that AFC West is going to be absolutely crazy, which cancels out the fact that half the divisions in the league are already complete snoozers.
True. And I'm going to get to one of my own, assuming that Rob doesn't talk about it. But your biggest surprise so far this year, Mr. Stats?
My biggest is Arizona right now. And it's not like I expected them to be good, but not at like this level. And then they go out there this past week without Kyler, without Nuke, and they just lit it up. And they lost Chase Edmonds at one point. And Pittsburgh Steelers fans and anybody who had James Conner on fantasy for the last 2 years was probably slamming their head against a wall or a table. He was just lighting it up all of a sudden. And they've been my big surprise so far, just in the positive way of like, I knew they'd be a contender. I knew they'd be a playoff team. They challenged for that division title. They challenged the Rams no matter what. And I just like at that level of like, they're living up to beyond the hype with it. The disappointing surprise, I think, is like the Vikings. Like they're just not, they're like all over the place. They've lost so many close games this year. Like, I mean, they could easily be the top team in the NFC North, and they're like the NFC version of the Chargers. Like JD would say, like they just can't get out of their own way. So those have been my two big surprises so far.
All right. For me, I'm going to go actually a little bit closer to home, and by that I mean a lot further away. I'm going with Dallas. For me, Dallas has surprised me on a few different fronts. Last year they went 6-10. Year before that they went 8-8. 2018 they did go 10-6, but started 3-5 and then suddenly got hot. This has been a team that, by and large, has been fairly weak in an already weak division. A lot of pundits, and myself included, figured that Dallas was probably going to win the division, but being as bad as it was, an 8-9 record could have conceivably made this happen. Instead, they're 6-2. They easily could have been 7-1, but they narrowly lost to Tampa in that game one in the first game of the season. And there was a lot of questions, at least in my mind, about how Dak was going to be able to perform after the injury last year. So the fact that they are 6-2, yes, they had the loss the other, last weekend, but pretty much a lot of the big teams got upset. And I was, like I said, a little surprised by that. They're running away with this division. It's 6-2. They're a full, 3.5 games ahead of, the Eagles and the Giants. There's no reason why they can't win the division and probably go to an AFC championship. Right now, I think there's some uncertainty with regards to Green Bay and everything that happened with Aaron Rodgers. If we get time, we'll talk about that a little bit. But I think they could break their literal 25-year streak and go to an AFC championship game. They have not done that since 1996. So that says a lot about where that team is at. So there's a lot of optimism right now in Dallas, a lot of excitement in Dallas right now. And there should be. I'm giving them a lot of credit. As a suffering Giants fan, hating to give cred and respect to a division rival, they've done a really good job. And JD, I give you respect for talking about Mac there. So
yeah, that was.
And by AFC, I do mean NFC. I don't know why I keep saying that. So this is, of course, I'm going to take it one step further in this case, just to get it out of the way. This, of course, is Tales from the Film Set, by the way, not the Sports Den.
You were like, there's. I see you when you said I see no problem or reason why they can't get to an AFC championship game. I'm sitting here going, I see one major problem. They're not in that conference.
Yeah.
I just thought you were stuffed up for a second. I'm like, maybe he's a little nasally today, and it just sounds like he's saying AFC and he's actually saying NFC.
No, call it my my childbirth challenges, and what things that have plagued me my entire life, which actually failed me greatly when my school failed to notice such things. But anyway, irrespective of my childhood challenges, let's move on quickly to something else. This case, I want to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl involving both the AFC and the NFC, regardless of which conference it happens to be. And I want to get a breakdown. I'm going to go in reverse order this time around and get the way too early picks of who you believe are going to be in there and who's going to win it. So in this case, I'm going to start with Rob since you were the one that made the biggest deal about my thing there. So you know what? You're starting off, dude.
All right. AFC. I mean, it is literally this year is like there's no. I mean, there is, you could probably say like the NFC is a little more clear cut as to who the top teams are, but AFC it's like it's the Wild West. It could be anybody. Honestly, if I had to pick somebody right now, I would say Baltimore because they're just so hard to kill. They're so hard to put away at the end of games, and Lamar Jackson just brings them back constantly. Like they're never out of it. We've seen them rally from 3 scores down in the fourth or, in the second half. So I would pick them just because of the explosiveness of that team. But with that said, I've been saying this for like a week and a half now. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to win that division. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to be something like the Raiders are a hot mess. The Broncos, I think they just got their statement win and they're going to spiral. The Chiefs are going to figure out a way to win that division, and they're somehow going to like stumble their way into an AFC championship game. And if they get there, if they right the ship at the right time, like here, we've seen the Giants do it twice and go to a Super Bowl and win. It's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. But I'll take Baltimore right now. And I think I'll take Baltimore in the AFC, and from the NFC, it's hard not to pick the Bucks right now. I mean, they look solid. They're just so deep. Like they could lose Fournette, and they got Ronald Jones. They're without Antonio Brown, and they still got Mike Evans and Godwin, and they're just so deep offensively. Even they don't have Gronk, but they got Brait and OJ Howard. They're the deepest team on offense in the NFC. And even the big trade, Von Miller going to LA, he doesn't even play this week. He's already out with an ankle injury or something. And Matt Stafford looked, like Matt Stafford he thought he was in Detroit again or something this past week, and it was bad. But I would say the Bucks out of the NFC, it's a little more clear cut for me. But the Cardinals, if they're healthy, Kyler Murray and Hopkins got to be healthy for them to go.
So let me ask you this before we move on to this. How much does the Aaron Rodgers issue and forcing to start Jordan Love, how much does that affect their chances, in your opinion, to get to the NFC Championship?
They got another problem they better be worried about in about the next 48 hours. That's gonna derail their championship if it happens. So if a certain guy who says that's his preferred landing spot goes there, Aaron Rodgers is going to need a second vaccine for the massive headache that he's going to have when a spoiled brat realizes he's not the number one guy again. On another, he's going to go from Cleveland to Green Bay, and he's not going to be the number one guy. Like Devontae Evans averages like 10 targets a game. Aaron Rodgers is not going to go away from that. That's a trusted thing. All it's going to do is open up more space for Devontae Adams.
JD?
I'm going to go. Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Baltimore out of the AFC. They've been knocking on the door for several years now, and John Harbaugh might be one of the most underrated coaches in the league. He's won a Super Bowl, has been now, I believe it's 14 years in Baltimore, and has quietly become one of the top coaches in the league. You hear about Bruce Arians, Belichick, Andy Reid, and the usual suspects up top, but right behind them and right up there with them is John Harbaugh. And Baltimore has been, they'll make playoff runs and then come up short, and then they break through and then win a Super Bowl. That could happen this year. Out of the NFC, I will go against my gut instinct of Tampa to be a little different and not completely copy Rob. I'm going to go with the Rams, despite them playing as badly as they did the other night against Tennessee. I could see that being a wake-up call for the Rams going forward, and Stafford can right the ship, and I could see Stafford having the talent and the firepower to beat Tampa in a hypothetical NFC Championship game. And as we saw with the 2 Giants Super Bowls in the past, the way to get past Brady in the playoffs is usually by getting in his face, is by a vicious pass rush like the Giants had in the 2 Super Bowls and like the Eagles had a bit to a lesser extent when they beat the Patriots. So if the Rams get everybody healthy on defense, they could be the defense that is strong enough to finally knock Brady off of his perch.
Fair enough. Obes?
All right, so I'm going to ignore your question for a minute. And I'm going to be the one guy who says, hold on, the OBJ is a cancer talk is out of control. And it's not just Rob who mentioned it. I just want to say that this is a guy who wanted to get traded in the offseason and was asking in the offseason. And yet, honestly, we've seen guys who want to get traded in the offseason, and Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson in football and Simmons in basketball and Harden in basketball. OBJ did not do anything about making it public in a huge-ass stink until the trading deadline. So, I mean, this is a guy who I think gets a worse rap than he deserves because he is out there and he wants to be out there, but he gets a worse rap than he deserves. So I believe if he ends up on a situation like a Green Bay, that he will not be a problem. That the situation, especially if he doesn't get claimed off of waivers, he's going to go somewhere where for the half a season he's on the team, he will be fine. I'm hearing that too. Is it me?
Yeah, there's a scrape going on. How's it? Yeah.
All right.
Sharpening a knife in there. Just
okay. So then I just want to defend the OBJ talk because I think where OBJ decides to go, and he may have announced it, we just haven't gotten the word yet, could totally change where we pick. But for the AFC, I think, first of all, the Chargers' history of not getting out of their own way is always in the second half of the season when they go to sleep. So right about now, the San Diego Chargers are getting ready to go to sleep. The Raiders are a mess. And so there you look at Kansas City, a half a game out, 2 ugly wins in a row, one of them against the Giants team, and then the other one against the Green Bay Packers, who handed them a win, like by not getting vaccinated, you handed them a win. And that's really good for them because wins translate to wins. CEH is going to come back. There are some offensive line problems. And they're the one team right now that has a quarterback in the AFC that I think is not up to par, which means if he is up to par, they're probably better than the Ravens and the Bills. I completely agree that I have no faith in Josh Allen. He's returning back to what he was 2 years ago with his ability to complete passes. So all that to say, as much as I want to take the Ravens and the Chiefs, by the way, I'm going to go out on a limb. And I'm going to say, after also having defended OBJ, that the Browns are back. Week one, I said my too early overreaction was that Baker's for real. And I've already stated that we shouldn't read too much into one game of OJ being gone and Baker having a good game. It's, Baker is up and down, but the entire AFC is up and down. So I'm going to go just because I think it's just too crazy to figure out in the AFC with Baker. In the NFC, yeah, like every part of your body is like, don't bet against Tom Brady. There's like, if I have money and Tom Brady's one of the choices, put it on Tom Brady. But this isn't for money. This is for some sort of pride and some sort of prognostication. I am going to finally give up the ghost of doubt. They're 8-1. Kyler and Nook were on the bench after a bad loss, and the rest of the team came out and rallied and crushed the Niners. That makes them a full team in my mind. I am finally on the bandwagon. Let's go, Mighty Mouse. Let's go, Cardinals.
Nice. All right. My case, I'm going to start with the AFC. The feel-good side of me really wants to go with Tennessee. The feel-good side of me. It's a nice town. They've got a good environment there. They've got the best record in the AFC. And losing Derrick Henry notwithstanding, they have enough to at least win the division and get mildly far into the playoffs. However, I don't think they're strong enough. I will continue, even though basically they've had really 2 crap wins, I will continue to say Kansas City will get to the AFC Championship and probably win it. And the reason I'm going with that is they've had 2 terrible wins in a row, but they've still had wins. And I think, Obi, you were the one that said that. The other guys, you guys may have said that as well. But this is a team that has the most hardcore playoff experience. You mentioned Baltimore. Baltimore has actually not been to an AFC Championship outside of that Super Bowl in about 10 years. They had the one Super Bowl, fine, but they have not had a lot of success getting far into the playoffs despite what they have been able to do in the regular season. Kansas City, the last 2 seasons, have gotten to the Super Bowl, and they've had a rough start, yes, but they're a half a game out of first place in a very winnable division. And you guys, everybody here knows that come playoff time, you become a totally different team. What you are in the regular season stops mattering, and what you are in the postseason is what matters. The Giants were lightning in a bottle for those 2 Super Bowls. They did not have great records, but they got smart and tough at the right time. And in this case, I will continue to stand with them until they prove me wrong. So, will they go the 13-4 that I said they would? Probably not. But a lot of people were also talking about the one year that New England started out 2-2, and they were done. The era was over, and everything like that. You know what happened? They went 14-2 that season and ran through the playoffs. They never lost another game after Game 4. So I can see the Chiefs doing that right now, and a big way to be able to prove that they've got what it takes is to beat the Vegas Raiders in Vegas on Sunday night. That's going to be a big monster game there. And if they can beat them, however they do it, they suddenly basically will be in first place. And I love the chance to be able to see them be able to do that. The Chargers, I don't think have the staying power there. I go with Kansas City, and I don't think any of the other teams do too. I don't think the Bills are ready yet, especially not after that bomb that they dropped in Jacksonville the other day. Now, going over to the NFC on my side of it, I mentioned the fact that I think the Cowboys can get to the NFC Championship. I do not believe that they're going to be able to win it. They're not strong enough. Green Bay has an air of uncertainty whether they get OBJ or not. What happened with that loss that they had the other day, and possibly however long this is going to take to get the ship righted again. They'll win the division, but I think they're going to cost themselves too much and will ultimately not get – they're going to lose in the playoffs. I think Green Bay will. For me, until again proven otherwise, it's Tampa. They're 6-2 right now. I like Arizona. They're my feel-good team. I mentioned Tennessee being the feel-good team in the AFC. In the NFC, it's Arizona. I like Kyler Murray. I like everybody that's been over there. I like the Zach Ertz pickup. I think it's a good feel-good team, but a feel-good team does not get you there. Experience and belief does. And right now, I think Tampa has that. So it's boring as heck, but I'm going to go back to a Super Bowl where Tampa ends up taking on Kansas City and probably wins again. I'm staying with that one. So, all right. Any other final thoughts on that before we wrap that up?
I have one other thought.
Please.
JD, Harbaugh, very well said. Probably the most underrated coach in the NFL. First of all, he's been the same team for 14 years. Right there, that just tells you something. But they keep winning, making it to the playoffs. That's another thing. And he said, this is the guy I got at quarterback. I'm not going to try to make him do what he can't do. I'm going to say, this is the guy we got. I don't care how much money's invested in him. I'm going to let him use his tools and build the offense around him. And it's worked. Now, is there a chance he runs and he slides? As amazing as he is, he does slide. He gets himself out of the way. So he might get hurt, but so might any other quarterback. And so, JD, great call on Harbaugh.
Yeah. And Harbaugh right now is the 4th longest tenured coach in the NFL behind Belichick, Sean Payton, Tomlin, and then him. And then after that, Pete Carroll. He's got more longevity, believe it or not, in Baltimore than Pete Carroll has in Seattle. That surprised me a little bit. All right. So we'll go down the other
Carroll
side.
Also he said something at one of his pressers recently where he was kind of playing coy over the idea of Seattle claiming OBJ on waivers. And apparently Wilson has said that it has expressed his desire to have Beckham as a teammate. So that will be interesting to see how that goes down, especially since Beckham has said, I want to play for a contender. Let me go through waivers so I can sign anywhere. So if Seattle claims him and throws a wrench into that, those should be some interesting fireworks to see how that goes down over the next few days.
I think the waiver period is over.
If he hasn't been claimed yet, but it's. I mean, he literally came out and was like, "If I get claimed by a team I don't want to go to, I'm going to be a problem."
Yeah,
I mean, like you can't say the guy's not a cancer when he comes out and literally says that and goes, "I'm going to be a problem."
Wait, Eli said that, and so did Elway. Like, I'm not.
By the way, there was a great thing on Twitter today. Was that maybe OBJ is just a product of Eli Manning, and it broke down every other wide receiver and tight end that Eli played with and how they did nothing after they left New York. Like Victor Cruz, Manningham, Beckham. I was like, this is great.
Hakeem Nicks did nothing. Hakeem Nicks,
yep. Yeah. Plexico Burris faded into obscurity after he left.
Yes.
He also shot himself in the leg, but that's a different one.
He had a decent year with the Jets, and then he disappeared. After that, Plaxico, I mean.
And he had a few years under his belt by the time. I mean, that was his, third team? He went from the Steelers Super Bowl victory to the Giants Super Bowl victory to the Jets with 1 year at the Jets. And then it was, he was old. But I did see some of that. It is true.
I'm just watching. I'm watching Twitter right now to find out if there's any breaking news on that. And right now, all it is on Twitter is I'm calling it right now. They're going to. He's going to Denver. He's going to Dallas. He's going. He's going to Jacksonville. Thinking it into existence that he's going to my Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's where he's going.
I kind of jokingly said to Big Vet over the weekend. I was like, that division is such a mess right now. Like, even with the big win, like. The Tennessee defense has to play like that every week for them to win. Yeah. And that's why I'm not sold on them. And I'm like, anybody could win. Like if Jacksonville all of a sudden gets a marquee receiver who lives up to the hype and goes on a tear, like they could be the AFC East of this year. Like get in with like 8 and 9.
So I want to say that
the Titans have a 3-game lead though.
Not only do the Titans have a 3-game lead, but when you look as amazing as Henry is, the other running backs together, with or without Adrian Peterson, they're not changing up the style of the way they play. They're still just going to pound the rock. You're not going to get some of the explosive runs, but this is a team that is built to play and go and be methodical. And with the running back, the next back up. Now, we have seen that in Carolina when CMC's gone down, it hasn't quite worked. But in other places, we saw the main running back go down, and it's been fine. I mean, as bad as the Giants were last year after Barkley went down, it wasn't because Gallman wasn't playing well. I mean, Gallman's numbers were great many games. So I think the one thing they lost a guy with star power, but I don't think they took as big of a hit as we think they did. But I still think, Scott, your description of how far they were going to go was the same with or without Henry. So I agree that they're a playoff team. They were a playoff team. They're still a playoff team. But you got to look at one of the teams with one of the more explosive quarterbacks if you're making your pick. Doesn't mean that they won't get through because teams get through.
Yeah, the Titans impressed me as well the other night.
They could realistically lose 5 of their next 6. I just looked at their schedule. Like, if they lose 5 of their next 6, it's going to be that division's up for grabs for anybody, including the Jaguars.
That's going to open up a question I wanted to ask you, gentlemen. We mentioned the Jaguars before. Obi, you and I have already talked about this, but please, whatever thoughts you have here as well. There's talk repeatedly about moving the Jaguars somewhere. I mean, when they're far and away the most unpopular franchise in the NFL. There's talk about moving them to London, which is now no longer happening. But I have a proposal for the two guys down below here. What if Jacksonville stayed in the South and moved to St. Louis?
St. Louis has lost 2 NFL teams. I don't think they're getting a third one. St. Louis as a city, I think, has declined. Their I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but their population decline over the past 20 years is quite staggering. Like relative to other major cities in the country. So the St. Louis area They care about the Cardinals and the Blues, and that's it.
The only reason I'm saying this is because I saw what the numbers were when they had an XFL team last year, and their TV ratings were actually better than the St. Louis Blues, who won the Stanley Cup the year prior. So I wondered it from that particular perspective, and it would not be a difficult switch. You could take that team. I mean, St. Louis isn't really that far south, but it's not all the way to Idaho. So my thought in this case is if you move that team to a market that, yes, has been twice burned and therefore 3 times shy, it might be good for the NFL because Jacksonville's got no fan base. Tampa never really had one until Tom Brady showed up.
I'm with JD, though. I feel, they've had 2 teams already. They both packed their bags and left. And the other thing is now when you look at teams moving and going to different places, stadiums. They have that old stadium, but that stadium was one of the most brutal stadiums to play in, dude. That turf, it was like playing on a hardwood floor with a carpet over it. Like there were so many concussions back then. I don't see him going back there. I think there's a better chance of them going to – I would be intrigued to see them go to London and see how the league try to manage that debacle of like schedules going back and forth.
Yeah, I just don't see how the logistics for a London team work.
But then again, like Miami declined the bye week this year, coming back from London. They were the first team I think that's ever played the following week after playing in London. And because they had the option, you could take the bye week right after London, or you could take the bye week later on. But yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it.
I just want to ask that.
The what?
How'd that work out?
Did we win or I think we lost? We probably lost. I don't know. Because I think we've won 2 games this year, so we definitely lost. Right? I mean, dude, someone did the power rankings like a week ago, and Miami's the worst team in the league, hands down. And the guy laid it out perfectly about how Reese and Greer went from having the 3rd and 8th picks to having the 6th and no future first round picks next year somehow. Like that tells you the brain trust of people who are running the Dolphins. Like it's worse than the Jets.
For the record, they went out. They came back from London with the Jacksonville field goal loss, and then went out and lost to Atlanta at home the next week.
Yes, that's right.
They only lost by 2, which is better than their average margin for the year. Yeah. But so I guess that's an improvement. Yeah. With the stadium, absolutely is the issue of why the Rams left St. Louis in the first place. Yeah. So the Rams were trying to force the city to pay for expensive renovations at that stadium. The city told them kiss off, and so they did. They would need to do those. The city would need to pay for those renovations and then some in order to attract another NFL team. And they're actually still in litigation with the Rams over relocation costs. That the team owes the city, and the back and forth over that 5 years later is still going on. So I do not see St. Louis getting an NFL team again. Really the best emerging market for another team in the United States, which would never happen, would be the San Antonio and Austin area. But Jerry Jones will not let it happen.
I was going to say.
So what about
go, Obi?
What about not in the States, and we go south where we have big stadiums into Mexico?
Could do that.
What if we go north? What if we go to Toronto?
That's the other one.
The Canadian market.
I was surprised that with one of the rumors I heard for how a 17-game schedule would work, although they ended up just tacking on an extra home game for a few teams randomly this year, and I guess those teams will reverse next year, was to have every team, but was instead of putting a team in London or Mexico City, was you have each team play 8 home games, 8 road games, and a neutral site game, in all of those cities, in London, in Toronto, in Mexico City. You could even add in Berlin or Frankfurt, Madrid.
You haven't mentioned Asia yet. Japan would go crazy for that.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about that, but there are places about Japan.
Amerikaci no sport daisuki da na. They love American sports. So,
I know.
But I think COVID could have been a big issue too with the neutral sites too. Like we're still not completely out of the weeds, so we might have a better look on like what you were saying with doing the neutral stuff next year, and having those 3, having Mexico City, having London, and then maybe going up to Canada.
They're trying to figure out a way to expand and build the brand. The only reason I'm going to say Mexico, I think, is a better option than Toronto. Is Toronto already has the Argonauts. They already have a football team that's well received up there. Canadian, granted, but it's not as unique to them as it would be for Mexico. And because of the increasing population being Hispanic and being Spanish and things like that, I think you can get a very quick draw and people can really connect very quickly. Additionally, if you move Jacksonville down there, you can keep them in the South. You would not have to do any kind of division relocation or complicate the structure by putting a North team in the South and dealing with all that kind of headache. You can just pick them up, drop them, or play half their games or something. But they've been wanting to build the brand outside the U.S. I think Mexico is a phenomenal way to start that off. I forget which one of you said it, but genius.
Yeah, I think the only other, like domestically, I think the best shot would be San Diego.
They could,
yes.
I would take San Diego over St. Louis. And like you said, Austin, the Austin San Antonio area is not going to get it for obvious reasons. But yeah, I think San Diego would be a better spot than the other two, than St. Louis.
Yeah.
I think the city would absolutely support football again. If I would not be. I also think that the long game is that the Chargers, once Spanos sells the team or dies, that once the Chargers ownership changes over, I think that they do end up back in San Diego because they don't have their own stadium in LA. They're renting from the Rams. So
I don't think LA would care that much either.
So yeah, and the Chargers, for as well as they've played, they have essentially no fan base. They don't have a, they're even worse than the Jets now as far as their territory being overlapped by another team that it has more history than them, and is better than them. So the Rams got to LA first, and since the Rams were in LA, years before, they were able to strike first in the LA market. The Chargers, with their departure from San Diego, turned off the entire city of San Diego. They were thinking that fans would still make the trek from San Diego to LA. They haven't really, at least not in large enough numbers. And with LA being such a fickle place to begin with.
What was
There's
that?
always Portland and OKC.
Game? Yeah, well, what was the primetime game that the Chargers played a couple weeks back? I was watching it and I'm like, okay, they're on the. I think they played Vegas. I think it was like a Monday night game, and I thought the game was in Vegas. And I'm like, okay, and I hear the crowd cheering and everything, and all of a sudden I see them get inside the tent, and I'm like, the end zone says Chargers. And they're like, yeah, we're here now. And they cut to commercial, like, we'll be back in LA. And I'm like, oh my God, there's just no fan base in LA for them. The only other two places I would personally like to see is like, give me a team in Hawaii or Alaska. Like, just.
Yeah, but travel.
That might be even harder to navigate than London.
Yeah.
Unless you can learn how to teleport, yeah. But I mean, here's the thing. The issue with San Diego is similar to St. Louis, where they were royally burned. But additionally, what adds to it is there's not a lot of teams there. San Diego, all they got left really is the Padres. In St. Louis, you got the Cardinals, you got the Blues, you got two teams there, but that's all you've pretty much got in St. Louis. LA, you've got two baseball teams, two basketball teams, still a football team, a hockey team. You could absorb one loss and be like, all right, I'll just make up for something else. Same with New York. I mean, if one of the teams here left, hypothetically speaking, you'd manage. And another team would pop up pretty quickly here anyway. San Diego, boy, they deserve it. I mean, I know people that were season ticket holders for like 30 years for Chargers games. And they're like, they gave us the offer to go to LA and continue our season ticket package. And we're like, no, we're not going to drive to 3 hours. And you took our team away from us.
Yeah, the hatred for the Spanos family and how they host the city of San Diego is up there with how Art Modell is hated in Cleveland. It's not quite to that level, but it's up there.
Yeah, and San Diego's a great city. I love that city.
I think Obi made a great point too. Like, I would love to see a team go to like Portland in Oregon. I mean, Nike headquarters is up there. College football is very big up there. So I could see it transitioning over to the pro game very easily. I mean, you got Oregon State, and then, hey, give those fans something to cheer, a common, a common goal to cheer for on a Sunday. And I think it would be a great venue, a great market to pick up on.
Is there a
Students
stadium? Is there a
fight that,
stadium
though.
available there though? That's the thing. Is there a stadium or the willingness to that could go to NFL standards or the capacity to build one in Portland? That
the
I do
Just
not
Do
know.
It Stadium via Nike. Like,
Fair. So, all right. So we got about 15 minutes left almost. Find us always on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and also at Spanglish World Sports Den on Facebook and also on Instagram as well. The reason I wanted to end that part on football is because, JD, I wanted to give you a little bit of time down there. You wanted to talk about college basketball. You wanted to talk about Seton Hall. So, sir, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, Seton Hall is starting tomorrow. College basketball season started with a bunch of games today. I didn't see if Rutgers is playing tonight or tomorrow, but their first game is this week as well. Seton Hall was picked 5th in the coaches poll to finish in 5th in the league, and I think that they should go a little higher, probably more like 3rd or 4th. But you have Villanova and UConn at the top, and then sort of a mishmash in the middle of teams that could fall in any particular order. And then you have Rutgers, which would probably be middle of the pack in the Big Ten again, but would be enough to get back to the tournament. With this past season being Rutgers' first NCAA tournament berth in 30 years and their first NCAA victory in almost 40. So both New Jersey major college basketball teams should be competitive, which this is the first time it's happened in decades where both teams are both good at the same time, and they play each other in the return of the epic Garden State Hardwood Classic rivalry on December 12th.
So, anything else for any of the gentlemen? I mean, Rob, I know you cover college basketball.
Yeah, I start tonight, actually. I have women's basketball, NJIT versus Wagner, non-conference matchup, NEC versus America East, since NJIT finally found a home that was actually near home and not playing down in Florida. But yeah, it's going to be – I cover more of the mid-majors and stuff, so it's like for them to get into the tournament, it's usually just your – conference champion. Like very rarely do they get an at-large bid. I'll probably cover some St. Peter's University games this year as well, which is MAC, Mid-Atlantic Athletic Conference. So I think, yeah, like he said, it's when Rutgers and Seton Hall both, should do well enough this year to get into the tournament again. They're in those Power 5 conferences. So Rutgers last year was like kind of a surprise that they just kind of landed in the middle, but they were still, I think I saw them play once last year, but there was always highlights going on. So I know they're hoping to build off of that. JD, are you covering any of the Seton Hall games at all?
Not as of now, but I have season tickets. But
gotcha. Yeah.
If Spanglish is willing to cover something, I volunteer as tribute.
All right.
They're playing at the Rock still, right? At the Prudential Center.
Yeah, they play. The Seton Hall plays their home games at Prudential Center in Newark, where the Devils play.
Yeah, NJIT played there at first when they were renovating the gym. When they were building the new place, they went down to the Prudential Center for like a season and a half.
Yeah, I haven't been to the new gym at NJIT yet, but I hear it is pretty nice how they.
It was voted the top mid-major athletic facility in the country last year, I think. So it's nice. Yeah,
and Seton Hall just finished renovating their historic on-campus gym, Walsh Gym, which is their first renovation of any kind really since the 80s, and the first major undertaking since it was first built in the in the early 40s. It is it's the home of the women's basketball team, and the men's game plays an occasional out-of-conference cupcake there or an exhibition game. But especially now with it, they replaced some of the bleachers with seat back, so the capacity is only about 1,200. But it's a nice little place, but not sustainable for any kind of major men's college basketball.
Yeah, I covered like women's volleyball and some women's basketball games over there.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's funny because one of the schools I worked for, Felician University, just renovated their gym, and another school I used to work at, when I was there, they were talking about renovating the gym, and I'm like. It's like you were saying, there's these old kind of historic buildings. you can't just like knock them down, or like you're dealing with schools that have limited resources and budget money. So we used to always talk about build around it. Leave it, but just build around it. And Felician actually did that. They literally built around the gym. And then during the break, like the summer break, they were able to finish everything off. Like they just kind of domed it. And then they were like, oh yeah, when we were done, like the roof was there already. Like we just extended this part. I'm like, this is genius. I was like, you guys need to like make this blueprint for everyone all over the country. Like it was so simple, but so complicated for some schools to remember. So I'm looking hopefully I'll be at Seton Hall at some point to see what Walsh looks like, because I haven't been there since pre-pandemic. But I know it was I like the building. I like that old school feel to it. I like the little bandboxes, because it would get like women's basketball games. They got loud in there.
Yeah, I actually got women's basketball season tickets this year as well, mainly so I could see the Seton Hall UConn game, which will be which, even, with UConn being the juggernaut they are, they'll probably wipe the floor with Seton Hall. But with us, a jam-packed Walsh gym, for a Seton Hall UConn women's basketball game is a crazy environment, and I'm looking forward to it.
The old Zoom, we call it the Zoom Center in NJIT, their old gym was like that. It was basically like a high school gym. It had bleachers just on one side. The benches were on the back wall. And when they were doing really well, when Jim Engels was there, they were going to like the CIT tournament, even like men's volleyball matches against Penn State. Deafening. Like there were points where we were like, do we need headsets to talk to each other? I'm like doing stats and the person is next to me and only screaming in their face like, jumper 24. Like, everyone's like, can you guys hear each other? We're like, no, barely. Like,
yeah. Nice. All right. So we got, like I said, thank you for that, man. Any quick analysis on who you think is going to win the NCAA finals as the season just starts? You're way too early pick.
I'll be honest, I haven't even had a chance to look at the preseason top 25 yet.
Sorry,
I mostly follow my.
I'm going to guaranteed prediction right here: the team that wins 6 games in the tournament.
Sometimes 7.
Sometimes 7. Yeah. I was going to say 6 though, because I don't think anybody's getting out of the playoff playing game.
Well, there have been teams that have made it from the first 4 to the final 4 before. That's happened a few times. So maybe it's only a matter of time before one of them does.
Now, Rob, in this case, the team that wins the 6th, you're predicting that now. Do you know what the betting line is on that? Can we get in on that right now and say that it's either the first team to win 6 will win? I mean, how much would you earn for that? Like that?
Yeah. The first team to win 6, they're like, oh, I'll give you $1 for that. It's funny because we here in Jersey, for those who don't know, we had a proposition in election day for sports gambling, and it got rejected, and I was kind of mad. I think it's also why they don't want me doing the book this year for college basketball games. I jokingly was like,
well, you can bet on college basketball games. You just cannot bet on New Jersey schools. So you can't drop a bet on Seton Hall or Rutgers or NJIT, but you can bet on any other college basketball games. Same way you can also bet on, you could go over to PA or Delaware and bet on Seton Hall there. I've done that many times.
I just want to ask you guys a question here. Do you guys know how much money New Jersey as a state earns on sports betting fees?
I only know this because I heard it yesterday.
The state, I'm not talking the business itself. How much they physically earn and how much money comes in as revenue to the state.
I heard it yesterday. For the month, they made $1 billion last month.
Yep.
They said that on Carton and Roberts. They were like, last month was the first month they I guess the gross revenue was $1 billion.
Yeah.
And
we're
they
not seeing any of it, but it's good it's coming in.
Supposedly, like they were talking about it yesterday, about like one of the casinos or something get taxed like 51%.
Yes,
of like whatever they make. I'm like,
accurate number,
as they should.
Yeah.
And also being brick and mortar, obviously you got to pay for all that on top of it.
Yeah.
So
that's why I was like, they were saying they're like, and New York just passed a law that went into effect, it makes it easier for people to gamble in New York, basically like 24/7 now.
Yeah.
So, because I know people who would come to Jersey to place bets because they couldn't bet in New York.
I read it.
Jersey starts to get the weed money too.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get some relief here.
I read an article a few months back about a pizza place I think it was in either Leonia or Fort Lee, one of the Bergen County towns right across the bridge, and it was this. It was an Italian restaurant, a pizza place, that it kind of became a de facto sports book, because people would cross the bridge, grab a slice and sit there and with their phones and put bets on the app, because you have to physically be, it's geotagged. You have to be physically in New Jersey in order to bet. So people would go across the bridge, hang out at this pizza place for the day, and place their bets.
And years ago, people across the border would actually just fill up their gas tank, which you can't do anymore, because the prices are about the same. So now you come over and do sports betting.
Yeah. I remember as a youth, I used to cross the border to go to OTB in New York State.
Yes.
See, that's a Bergen County concept that I'm not used to. Heck, even just moving down to PA recently, I'm just used to getting the concept of crossing a state border without paying a toll.
So, all right, we got to wrap this up. We got about 3 minutes left, but I want to give you guys a quick window if you have any final thoughts. Rob, I will start with you. Anything you want to add? Any thoughts you got?
No, you know what? I'm very disappointed to be a Miami Dolphin fan. And not because the team is losing, but I'm one of those people who is totally on board with Ross is ridiculous. If you guys don't know, it was the Deshaun Watson thing. He was one of the people, he wanted the alleged victims to sign these NDAs and try to get this settlement to get for the trade. And it's just ridiculous at this point. Like, you drafted a quarterback last year. He's obviously not the guy you wanted, or he didn't work out the way you did. But when you're going into this whole Watson thing, it's a whole different world. Like, sexual inappropriations, it's not the same as sports. And it's just like, oh yeah, here, go sign a thing. Like, the Dolphins really need to just, if you want to make the trade, stay out of everything else. Like, I get it, but it's like, you got to know where the line is there. So that's my final thought.
Fair enough. Obi?
As you can see, my mustache is not, whatever it is, it's going crazy. We're in No Shave or Movember. And just a reminder, this is Men's Health Awareness Month. And for me, when I hear that, I'm thinking of those of us with prostates. Remember, if prostate cancer can get Steve Jobs, you're not rich enough to prevent it. So go get checked out by your doctor.
All right. Appreciate that. JD, how about you? You're rocking a little No Shave here, though.
Yeah, I do the no shave, or just trimming all year round. So the men's health is a fantastic cause that doesn't get enough attention. So it's great that No Shave November has taken off as much as it has. So talk to your doctor and get your regular checkups, especially as you get older.
And unfortunately, if I don't shave, then I don't get health insurance. So it all ties together. So this has got to keep coming off as needed. So, all right. And for us, appreciate the time as always. This has been the Sports Den. Find us always on Twitter at SSW Sports Den, and also on Instagram and Facebook at Spanglish World Sports Den. For Mr. Obi Spencer, Mr. Rob Stats, and also Mr. JD Walker, I'm Scott Schertzen. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate the time. You guys are awesome. Stay tuned at 8 o'clock tonight as we talk about Tales from the Film Set. And we talk about the Eternals. We talk about what's going on with Marvel and some of the chaos that's going on there. And also the weird experience I had yesterday at a mall I've never been to and died in. Have a great night. Be awesome.